Well, hello YouTubers, welcome to another presentation of money creation. Now, for those of you who watch my previous video, I told you that there was two ways money or currency get created. The first way, many may know that the Fed create currency. They may not know how they create currency, but they know the Fed create currency. The second way is through the banking system. So if you want to know how the bank and the Fed create currency, please go ahead and hit the thumbs up down there. And do me a favor and subscribe so the next time I come up with a new video, you'll be the first to know. This happened. Well, it all starts with government and politicians wanting to fund a project. Well, that project can be anything. It could be a bigger army. It could be a politician want to get elected and says, I'm going to give you something for free. Well, whatever we're trying to do, everything starts with a cost. There's a cost associated with it. Well, the way the government get most of its revenue is through taxes. And if we're going to start a new project, that means that we're going to need more taxes to pay for that project. Usually people don't like that. So what politician or government will say is it's not going to cost you anything. It's going to be a free project. Well, if you stay tuned, I'm going to show you how this is not a free project, but it's always start in one or two that way. So whenever they say this, the step that they take to fund this project is they will go to the Treasury. They will, let's say the project costs $100 million. They'll go to the Treasury and said, hey, I need $100 million. But the Treasury don't have $100 million to give to the politicians slash government for whatever they're trying to do. So what they'll do is they'll create a Treasury bond. A Treasury bond is pretty much an IOU that state that you give money today and in some 10, 20 years, whatever the bond is for, I will give you your money back. And to make it interesting, so you can give me your money today, when I give you your money back, I'll give you a little bit more. We'll call that interest. So for example, it's like me saying, if you let me borrow $10 today, tomorrow I'll give you $11. It's kind of the same idea. So whenever Treasury create their Treasury bond, the banks comes in and they buy the Treasury bond with the interest. So they'll go and buy the Treasury bond from the Treasury. So the Treasury get money from the bank, which the Treasury takes and give it to the politician, and the bank get the Treasury bond. Things. The bank does not keep the Treasury bond. The bank take the Treasury bond and the bank sell it to the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve then, to buy that bond from the bank, will write a check to the bank. And the problem with that whole little transaction is the Federal Reserve don't have the money as well. So whenever the Federal Reserve write a check, what they're going to do is create money. This is where they just point it out to the bank. And now the Federal Reserve will be the new holder for that Treasury bond. So once the Federal Reserve become the holder of the Treasury bond, what they're going to do now is hold it until it matures. And once it's mature, they're going to collect payment from the Treasury. So you might ask yourself then, if the Treasury didn't have the initial money to give to the government, how do they manage to pay the Fed for the bond that they're holding? Well, the Treasury get its revenue from the IRS, the Internal Revenue Services, which is literally our tax money. So that means at the beginning, when the government politicians say this is not going to cost you anything, they lie to you, because in the end, whenever that bond mature, you're gonna end up paying for it. But here's the kicker: you're not just paying for the project, because now you got to pay for interest. Because remember when I told you in the beginning, when the bond was created, it was you give me your money now and I'll give you a little bit more tomorrow. So you get to pay for both. later. So whenever that system take place, you end up creating more currency, which create inflation. Plus, now you have to pay more money. You got to pay for the project that you didn't want to pay for to begin with, plus the interest for that project. So that's how the Fed system create currency. Now let's just go ahead and talk about how the bank, just for a little bit. For us to really understand how the bank create currency, I'm gonna have to go ahead and create my own bank. So I'm gonna create my own bank, and I'm gonna call it Bank for All. It's a bank that open to everybody. So all bank have something that called fractional reserve lending. Fractional reserve lending is a system to which the bank only hold a fraction of the money that you deposit in it. This is the definition down there. It states that it's a banking system in which bank only hold a fraction of the money that customer deposit as reserve. This allowed them to use the rest of it to make loans and thereby essentially creating new money. This gives commercial banks the power to directly affect the money supply. So exactly what this definition states, whenever you deposit your money in the bank literally have the power to use some of your money and do whatever it wants with it. Whether you want to create a loan, go invest in the stock market, your money does not stay in the vault. The bank take your money and use it. So then you might ask yourself, well, how much of my money is in the vault? Well, bank normally reserve 10%, some have 3%, and some don't reserve any at all, depending on what kind of transaction you made with them. So let's just go ahead and explore this a little bit further and get some clearer. So let's say we have the same bank, Bank for All, and they're responsible, so they're gonna have a fractional reserve lending of 10%, right? So let's just say that I go to the bank and I make a deposit, and I'm gonna deposit 100 bucks. All right, so if you follow this table with me real quick, so I go and I deposit 100 bucks, right? So the bank, without telling me, they're only gonna keep $10 of my 100 bucks because we have a reserve lending of 10%. So that's all they're gonna reserve. That's all that's gonna stay in the vault. The remaining $90, they're gonna take it and invest it. They're gonna either give it to a loan or invest it. So that means that they're gonna create $90 because even though they took $90 of my $100, when I look at my account, it's gonna state that I have $100 in there. It's not gonna state that I have $10. So that means there is $190 in circulation. All right. So to understand how this really hurts you, let's go ahead and say Jill wanted to borrow the $90 because Jill wanted to buy a toaster from John. So Jill go and buy the $90. I'm sorry, not buy and borrow the $90 that the bank is took from me and went and buy a toaster from John. Well, whenever we get money nowadays, we don't just keep it under a mattress. So John's gonna do exactly what I did. John's gonna deposit that $90 in the bank. So whenever John does this, the exact same thing that happened to me gonna happen to John. So John gonna deposit $90. The bank only gonna reserve 10%, which is $9, and the remaining 81 bucks, the bank's gonna do the exact same system with it. So they're gonna either put it for loan or investment. So that means with both transactions, my $100 and John's $90, $171 now is created from thin air, from nothing. All right. Let's just go ahead and have a quick recap. So we had a bank that we created called Bank for All that had a fractional reserve lending of 10%. I went and I make a deposit. Only $10 was reserved. $90 was taken from my money and just give out for a loan. John went and did the exact same thing, deposit 90 bucks. Only 10% of that was reserved, which is $9, and $81 now is taken for investment and to be loaned out. So that means $171 was created. Now that process was gonna repeat over and over and over again because somebody's gonna want that $81, and then after that somebody's gonna want that, and so on and so forth. At the end, if I wanted to carry this out all the way through, at the end of it all, $1,000 will be created with only $100 backing it up. So you might ask yourself, well, why do the bank do this? This is like something crazy. Well, they do this because they are betting that I will not want my $100 and John's not gonna want his $90 all at once. They are betting that what are the chance of me and John's and everybody else who make deposits gonna want all their money at one time. Normally people go and they only take a portion of their money. That's what they're banking on. But what they don't realize is people only want their money in case of emergency. We'll talk about that a little bit later. So let's go ahead and evaluate who's really benefiting from this whole system. We know the system started when the Treasury issued a Treasury bond. Okay, nobody made any money yet. It's just a piece of paper was created. The second the bank bought the Treasury bond for interest, they made money because now they made the interest on that Treasury bond. The bank also made money when they go ahead and sold that Treasury bond to the Fed. So far, the bank already made money in two ways with the Fed system. The Fed now just have to hold the Treasury bond and collect payment once they bought it from the bank. Let's go ahead and evaluate the other system, which is the banking system, right? So the bank will lend out 90% of everything that get deposited into their vault. So they don't lend it out for free. They incur interest on it, so they make money there. And they will also invest some of it in the stock market, hoping to make a profit. They make money there again. All right. Now, one thing I didn't know, which through my research, I found out that the Federal Reserve is not really federal. It has owners. And the Federal Reserve is required to pay its owners a 6% dividend. And the owner of the Federal Reserve is the bank. So throughout the entire system, you can see the bank make money in 5 different ways when money is created. So now let's do the opposite and see who's losing money in this transaction. Well, let's look at the Fed system, right? So it comes up with a politician or government saying that I'm going to do a project and it's not going to cost you a cent. I'm not going to raise any taxes. Well, we already know now that's a lie. It lied to you because in the end, you're going to end up paying for the project plus the interest that occur on that project, right? The bank is going to buy that treasury note with money they don't have because the bank's just going to write a check for it to print money. And whenever money is printed, that means money just got created. Whenever that does, it creates inflation, which means prices gonna be higher. So throughout the first system, you ended up paying for a project that you thought was free, and then on top of that, you get inflation, which causes higher prices. That's the Fed system. Now let's go ahead and talk about the bank system, right? So you work hard for your money, you go ahead and deposit it in the bank. The bank take 90% of it without telling you and lend it out so they can make a profit, which means that they created currency. Inflation take place, higher prices. Now, here's the part that really seems wrong. Well, the entire thing is wrong, but this one is just purely sad. The only time everybody's gonna need their money at once is during an emergency. Something really bad just take place. That's the only thing I can think of where everybody's gonna run to the bank and say, I need my money right now to save me from this situation. Well, if that were to occur, you will not be able to get your currency because, as I just demonstrated, the bank loan 90% of it out. They don't have enough currency at end to supply everybody with their own currency if they ever needed it in case of an emergency. So that's just awful. You're thinking you have money, you're doing the right thing, you're being responsible, keep your money in the bank in case of an emergency, you have it. But if that emergency ever come in a national level, you will not have anything to rely on. The bank will slowly close their door and tell you, sorry, we are closed. They even have a name for it. It's called a run on the bank. So when I first find this out, I was like, wow, this is insane. But this is the current system. What can you do? What's the solution here? Obviously, get out of currency. Currency is lose value over time, and it's allowed the bank and the Fed to make prices go higher. So get out of it. Get into real money like gold, silver, and Bitcoin. And last but not least, you might want to keep a rainy day fund somewhere other than the bank. Because I just show you if something were to really happen um, nationwide and everybody need their money at once, you will not be able to get yours, or you may not, depending on how early you are, because the bank really don't have it to give it to you. It's been loaned out or invested. So you really need to protect yourself there. So yeah, this was how money get created. So if you like this content, please go ahead and hit the like button, subscribe, and next time we'll talk more about how to take control over a currency so you can start getting some real money.